think my training was by inspiration gained from watching, being part of operations, admiring the people who did things very well, and also I know many people would say my generation didn't get trained at all. Actually, I can remember 3 or 4 surgeons, quite exceptional, who took special interest in encouraging me to do things carefully and well. So I don't really think we were that bad. It was never measured, that was the point. And as progress moves us on, we get to the point where things are measured. And the training of the trainers is really rather a new concept for people of my age, and I think you guys have got a lot of exciting things to tell me about it.
Can I just say though, Bill, the problem with the system was that it was a bit random.
It was
and
totally
some
random.
people came through it well, and some people completely faltered.
Yeah.
And we were so long hanging about operating for 10 or 12 years that we were bound to learn something.
Yes, and in certainly in rectal cancer, you had this terrible thing that you really couldn't see if you were the second assistant. You were on the end of a retractor for a while. Fortunately, they did it so rapidly that with such lack of identification of where they were cutting or tearing, that a lot of harm. I mean, every abdominoperineal operation, I think, made the patient impotent, often and still does. But the idea of recognizing what should be left behind and what should be taken out has really developed during my lifetime, I believe. And then to measure the skill with which the training is conducted is something very special and new, and I think you guys will tell us about it.
Mark and Tom, over to you.
Well, I might just start by saying that I think, Brendan, you're exactly right. It's the problem with the variability in how we're trained. And you published a very landmark paper that you mentioned of your learning curve for peritoneal malignancy cases, which was very difficult to get published because no one wanted to acknowledge this truth of the learning curve. But you've since published 2 papers of the training you've done in 2 other units where you've managed to abolish that learning curve completely and managed to get them to take up peritoneal malignancy with outcomes similar to the excellent results you report nowadays. And I think that's the basis, this concept of how do you get people to be able to train people to do things and stop that terrible learning curve which has a very negative impact on some patients. And perhaps Mark can explain where the programme came from LAPCO.
So going back to the LAPCO National Training Programme for Laparoscopic Colorectal Surgery, we managed to recruit 67 trainers based on their self-selection. So the number of cases they had performed, which was over 100, and their self-declaration that they wanted to be trainers. We pretty soon realized that not only did they all want to do training in different ways, in-reach, out-reach, immersion, but some of them just wanted to show people how good they were rather than actually train them. So we thought to ourselves, what do we do now? We knew that our friends in the endoscopy community, led by Roland Valori from Gloucester, had a course that stood out to us in a couple of respects. One is it was entirely bespoke to improve trainers who are endoscopists around the actual technique itself, not just talking about general concepts of surgical education and theories about how to be good trainers, but around the actual technique itself. And the second thing was it was delivered by endoscopists for endoscopists. And we realized this is what we needed in our LAPCO Train the Trainers course. So we reached out to Roland and his colleague John Anderson and Shuan Thomas Gibson, and we asked them to come and help us reimagine their TCT, Train the Colonoscopy Trainers course, into a laparoscopic or LAPCO Train the Trainers course. And they coached us over a period of time. This is a course where you don't use PowerPoint slides, you are peer-to-peer, just talking about the general and specific difficulties around training in laparoscopic colorectal. It incorporates a number of sets of dialogues about things like conscious competence, about how to avoid taking over in theatre, about how to deal with difficult trainees, together with a number of practical sessions, including things like, how to instruct in theatre, how to avoid dual task interference, and just how to train in the situation where you're just using a box trainer as a method of replicating training. Then day 2, we go into the operating room and we get our delegates, 6 of them, to actually do some live training, and each of them gets a chance to be scrutinised, observe, implementing the elements of the LabCo Train the Trainers course in a live setting on day 2, and all of them get then a sort of a multi-source feedback from all of their peer delegates on the same course.
But this course now is not just for laparoscopic, it's for... The other thing, Bill, of course, which has changed dramatically is that you and I were 10 or 12 years in some system where eventually you got a job somewhere. And how long did it take you to get a job? Not as long as me, perhaps, but...
I think I was 12 years as various kinds of registrar.
Yeah, so was I.
And then you were sent to Basingstoke.
And then I was sent to Basingstoke, yes.
For misbehaviour in London. 2 jobs across 2 sides of the river.
Well, yes, that's another story.
But so I think that of course the problem now is there are several issues. One is that the time that the trainees have to train is much limited. Their training period is limited, but also the number of opportunities is limited. The number of laparotomies that we did when I was training, we didn't have CT or MRI or ultrasound, so we did lots and lots of laparotomies, thinking there might be peritonitis and sometimes
evil vapours and things. And
the big part of it was feeling around, wasn't it?
So this is why I think we need to be focused more on training. And I think...
And it's not acceptable to have a litany of complications. Yeah. Now, hospitals, if a surgeon's having huge amounts of complications, the governance systems, hospitals will identify that. The ITU will report them. They say you have to be safe.
So the concept of training the trainers is really has come through endoscopy, and Roland Valori was very much developed that. Mark is now the head of endoscopy as well, so you've sort of merged roles of coming from...
Come a perfect circle.
Yeah.
What would, in both respects, train the colonoscopy trainers and our LabCo Train the Trainers, you think you go on a course, you just become a better trainer, fantastic. Yeah. But the unintended benefit, if you like, the consequence was in the surgical side, it actually shortens the proficiency gain curve for the people that they're training, which is exceptional that a course can do this. And if you look at just your personal function as a technical surgeon and an endoscopist on the Train the Colonoscopy Trainers course, you actually become a better surgeon or a better endoscopist just by going on a course to learn how to be a better trainer. You might say to yourself, why should that be? And the reason we think it is because we encourage things like reflection and insight, thinking about your capability, technical, non-technical capability as a surgeon, even though you're on a course whose primary objective is to teach you to be a better trainer.
And I think it is one of the aspects, I think we all appreciate that, and I put it recently a bit in that paper, is that you were a very good trainer and teacher. You were an inspiration in what you did and what you delivered. And I could see very early on that there was something magical about the TME and your devotion to TME and the way you could deliver this training. And we had such great fun when I was a trainee, which is why I came to work with you for 25 years.
I mean, you laugh about it, but one of the things we talk about on this course is the impact of role modelling, and it cannot be underestimated more that the influence of somebody like Bill and Brendan on young surgeons like me and all of the other hundreds of people that have come through your department is absolutely enormous, and it's pivotal in people's careers, because they might come to you thinking, I'm not sure what kind of surgeon I'm going to be, and they walk away in most cases knowing exactly what they want to do.
We've had a lot of colorectal.
Has that been adversely affected by the loss of the surgical firm, which has come from NHS reorganisation, I guess?
In some ways badly, in some ways it's kind of in some hierarchical, let's say patriarchal systems. you know, getting rid of that sort of that system has been good. You know, I was lucky I got the opportunity to work in Basingstoke for great role models, but we've alluded to the fact that many surgeons, particularly back along, were not great role models. They were aggressive and rude and bullying, and probably put as many people off doing surgery as they attracted people towards surgery. The other negative consequence of that kind of behaviour is that surgeons that train like that end up like that. I was lucky to work for you guys and people like Derek Finnis and Jay Simpson in Chichester and David Allen, who was another Basingstoke guy, and because they were such great surgeons but also very, very nice people, they made you want to do general surgery. And Tom probably got a similar list of people in his experience.
I mean, if you come back to the trainings, it sounds an odd concept that a day of practical sitting around in a circle chatting, which is very unsurgical, followed by a day in the operating theatre, can change things. But if I can give you just an example of a course we ran in Basingstoke recently for gynecologists on laparoscopic hysterectomy, we had 6 really good laparoscopic gynecologists who wanted to run this course themselves, who came to Basingstoke to find out what it was about. So they were really good, interested trainers. And the next day we took them out to the operating theatre and we gave them a registrar who had never done a laparoscopic hysterectomy. She'd done a bit of laparoscopy, but she'd never done a laparoscopic hysterectomy. None of them were scrubbed. They were just standing there, and they took this girl through a laparoscopic hysterectomy from beginning to end without being scrubbed, with no one taking over. And it was quite remarkable, and they were absolutely amazed, and she was amazed, and it's the impact of just, there was time, there was no pressure in the theatre, that was the only case, and that was the objective. Now, why does that matter? It matters because all the things Brendan said, that the lack of opportunity to train, the lack of cases, we've got to maximise these opportunities to get young surgeons independent and trained to do things properly without having to have this sort of terrible instance of cases that go wrong and things on your learning curve.
And also it's a huge impact for a surgeon, junior, senior. If something goes really badly, it haunts you and can destroy your career. People are destroyed by a bad outcome, and a bad outcome unsupported in a young surgeon is a tragedy. It sort of can destroy a young surgeon.
One of the things we dwell on in the course is about dealing with trainees in difficulty and giving trainees performance enhancing feedback. And you may have had, you know, a difficult case, for example, and you take the trainee into an appropriate situation and you sit them down, and if they've had a tough time, you need to identify exactly what's going on in their mind and give them some feedback they're going to take home and deal with the problem in a better way with your guidance and support. And of course, you guys were very good at doing that naturally, but not all surgeons are.
They do it in a structured way, and I think. Yeah. But I wonder. I mean, when I look at the concept, Bill, I wonder whether everybody doing technical procedures, which is surgery, working with your hands, even with a laparoscope or a robot or whatever the hell, whether everybody should be part of general surgical training.
Well, we're getting more and more traction with this course, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, and so just to take things on a little, this course now has a faculty in Norway, in Denmark, in Australia in gynecology, in the US as well, when it's been proven to increase procedural adoption, where you've got trainers training people in new techniques. They are 3.5 times more likely to take on that technique if they've been trained by people that have done this course. So the knock-ons have been fantastic for us.
The Americans wouldn't accept it from us, so they did it themselves. They got us to
tell them what to do.
And they've done it, and they've really embraced its ages.
And I see, Bill, in one sense, you were doing that all your life. You're going around the world with videos and operating here and there and showing things. But we probably need to do something like this in rectal cancer. You know, the steps of TME, and break it all down and say, check for this and check for that. And I think
I remember Brendan being on one of the committees when I was the junior rep, and I was on the Wessex I don't know what the committee would have been, and I turned up as, all the consultants there were complaining about the SHOs, how bad they were, and saying it was impossible to train anybody. And they said, what do you think, Brendan? You said, well, I find if I get them to do something, even if it's putting one stitch, they look after the patients better afterwards. and you've always
and
made... You've always made people... I've never seen you do an operation and not get the trainee to do part of it.
I remember one of the trainers that I refused to admit I didn't have. I had people that inspired me and really looked after me as a developing surgeon. So it wasn't all bad in the past. One that I loved until the day he died, and we exchanged letters because we became friends, a man called Rex Laurie. I shall never forget him looking at a row of stitches I did as a junior registrar, and he said, I think you'd better take them all out and put them in properly. and I've never forgotten that, and he looked after me from that right the way through. And one time I was listening to what you were saying. He took me on one side and said, I can see you're quite nervous about yourself or something. And he said, I can see that you're going to be very good indeed. And I think that made
a big difference.
I don't know whether I ever was, but it made me think that I had a future. So this business of realizing what the other guy's thinking, what the youngster is thinking.
That's why I said to you, it's really important.
So that role modelling was pivotal in your career.
Yeah.
I remember an old cardiothoracic surgeon when I was a fourth year medical student looking at my suturing the legs up after vein graft for bypass surgery, and he said, "Boy, do you build model aircraft?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Very good." Walked off, and I thought that's good enough for me.
And I think what the training has been is we've tried to work out all the things that actually make someone be a good trainer, and how we do it and break it down. And it's a day that we've just come back from running a course, and one of the surgeons, Henry Tilney, robotic surgeon at Freebar, Henry said, it's been such a good day because I've had time to reflect and think about the things I do. And there's nothing very new about what we've developed. It's just about putting it all together to make people understand the impact, the way we speak to each other, the way we sometimes the way we can overload people, we can interfere in things that can make it difficult for them to concentrate. We've got lots of silly little exercises that show that, and it works very well. So
I just to finish this session, because it's fascinating, I think you see, Bill, I think it's really
absolutely.
And it may be that we need to do something around the whole TME concept of how you do this and what are the pitfalls and so on. But how long does the course take? Is it 1 day or 2 days?
It's a 1.5 day course.
That's not a long time in surgical training, is it?
Most of the first day in the classroom and in the simulation room, and then day 2 is much more emphasis on practicals, and throughout teaching things like reflection and insight, always asking questions. I think surgeons are often good at projecting and saying, this is what I want you to do, whereas we need to learn to sit trainees down at the beginning of an episode or a procedure or a whole period of training and say, what do you want out of this? What are your expectations? What have you done before? Aligning your agendas with them, setting objectives, ground rules, and saying, this is all about you rather than about me.
Fascinating. Do you think that, I personally think that if I was starting surgery again, I'd want to do this course very early in my career.
You could do it now, Brendan.
We will do it. Ben and I will do it. We'll do a training the trainers course. We might do one for the camera. We might do a training.
You'd really enjoy it.
A day and a half in the camera.
We could do a few practicals on screen anytime you like. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and I think we do have to reflect on whether we could use some of this in the whole aspect of TME, whether it's laparoscopic, robotic, open and so on. Fascinating. Thank you very much. You can find a whole series of videos and links to our series of discussions around rectal cancer at this address. And if you have any suggestions what we might cover, please let us know. Thank you very much for joining us.